So I will begin. Let me make sure I'm not muted. No, I'm not muted and my video is on. So I will, let's see, I'll put on gallery view so I can see at least a few faces. Namaste. Namaste to everyone. Glad to see all of you. So welcome to our Bhagavad Gita class at the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston. And I will begin as always with the chant from the Gita Mahatmyam and Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsa Chanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Om, O Mother Bhagavad Gita, we meditate on you, who were made known to Partha by the Lord Narayana himself. You who were included in the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. You, the goddess who rains down the nectar of Advaita, non-dualism, in 18 chapters. You, the destroyer of relative existence. We worship Krishna, Lord of the world, the son of Vasudeva, the delight of his mother, Devaki, and the destroyer of the demons, Kamsa and Chanur. We worship that supremely blissful Madhava, by whose grace the mute are made eloquent and the lame are enabled to cross over mountains. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So we'll begin where we left off last time. We are in chapter 2. Last time we came to verse 46. And verse 46 was one of several that began with verse 41. Verse 41 through 46, which dealt with the Veda, the Vedas, the texts of the Vedas. And it specifically was about the Vedas, the Karma Kanda, the older portion of the Vedas, the ritualistic portion of the Vedas. And so Sri Krishna tells that many people are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas and they get lost within them. And they get attached to the promise of wealth and long life and life in heaven and all of the good things of earth that you can get by doing sakama karma, that is, rituals with a desire for the fruits of them. But then he tells Arjuna that you be beyond the three gunas, O Arjuna. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. The three Vedas deal with the things of the gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. That is, they deal with things at this plane, the worldly plane. Be you, O Arjuna, beyond the three gunas. And so therefore be beyond the Vedas. So again, remember, he's not talking about the wisdom of the Upanishads. But now when we study we say I'm studying the Vedas, what do we normally mean? We mean I'm studying the Upanishads. The Samhita portion, the early riks, those are very beautiful, prayers to different deities. Then came the use of those riks, those hymns of the Samhitas, in more and more elaborate rituals. And so Sri Krishna was coming in the late Vedic age. The Mahabharata took place in the late Vedic age, as did the Ramayana. the Ramayana before the Mahabharata, but both took place in the late Vedic age. And so this was a time of transition where both in the Upanishads and in the Mahabharata and very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, they were teaching that the ritualistic ways of the past, that is not the way to immortality. That at most can get you life in heaven for a long period of time, where you live a life of highly refined enjoyment with no suffering, no pains, no sickness. But it's like being on a long vacation. Eventually your vacation is over and you have to go back to work. You have to come back home, you have to get back in the daily grind. And so no matter how long you live in a heavenly world, you have to come back here. And so once you come back here, you don't even have a memory of having lived in heaven. Here at least, after you come back from a long vacation, you get a sabbatical from work, you have some money, you can travel around the world, have all sorts of adventures and wonderful experiences. At least you can come back and look at your photograph album. You can show movies from your camcorder to your friends and everything. You can talk about what you did. And when you sit in your easy chair in the late afternoon, you can think about, oh, it was so beautiful in Madrid and so wonderful in Salamanca and Paris and other places. Here, you can't even do that. Once Swarga, life in heaven, is over, you're born again here, and you don't even have any memory that you were ever there. And so it's as if it never happened. And in practical terms, it never happened. It does you no good. So by the late Vedic period, people had, the sages were understanding that that is not the goal of human life. So that's what Sri Krishna was dealing with in the immediately preceding verses. So I wanted last time to come up through verse 46 so that we could start the next topic in this chapter. So verse 46 says, which we did last time, I'll just briefly restate it. Yavan artha udapane sarvata samprudodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. That is, that just as a small reservoir of water does you no special good when the whole countryside is flooded with water, so the Vedas are of little use to the person who has attained to the highest knowledge. And that's consistent with what Sri Ramakrishna used to teach, that the scriptures are there just for informing you where to go, but there's nothing more than that. He would say that you can squeeze an almanac, but you don't get a drop of water from the almanac. Even in, as you most of you know, maybe all of you know, even in the West we have almanacs, Farmer's Almanac, which predicts the rainfall, like the Panjika. But he says you can squeeze the almanac and not a drop of water comes out. And so you can squeeze the scriptures and not a drop of spirituality comes out. And so, again, that's the way he sums up his teaching to Arjuna about the Vedas. That doesn't mean that the Vedas are useless, that you shouldn't read them, you should have nothing to do with them. No, it doesn't mean that. He was pointing, as Sri Ramakrishna did, over and over again, as Sri Ramakrishna did. Here, Sri Krishna is pointing to the fact that the goal of life is not the scriptures. The goal of life is not the rituals of the Vedas, which lead to long life and prosperity and going to heaven, because all of that comes to an end. All of it comes to an end. And so for the person who has attained to right understanding, for such a one, or for one who has attained to illumination, he's speaking of here, it's like the whole countryside is flooded with the water of knowledge. Everything is pervaded by the bliss of Brahman. So why am I going to go to the Vedas, meaning go to the rituals to perform some little ritual to get some little temporary end? It has no meaning for me because I have gone beyond all of that. Now everything is filled with the bliss of Brahman. Why should I go elsewhere? So now we come to the new verse for us in this class, and that is verse 47, which is one of the most famous verses in the Gita. And that is, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhur ma te sangostva karmani. So the first half of it is the most famous half. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Yours is the right to work, not to the fruits of work, never to the fruits of the work. And then the rest of the verse says, ma phalaheturbhur. Don't be one who produces fruits of action, that is for as their motive. Mate sangostva karmani, but also do not be attached to inaction. So don't be one who works for the sake of a motive. I want this, I want that, and so I'm going to work. But also don't be attached to inaction. So work, but don't be attached to the motive or to the fruits of the action. So this is, again, the most famous verse perhaps in the Gita. In fact, in around 1978, 77, 78, somewhere around there, India put out a Bhagavad Gita stamp, a postage stamp, first class postage of the time for a regular domestic mail, a letter weight. And that was, I still have one. I meant to bring it to show it to you, but it's in my room. It's a red stamp with gold lettering and a gold image of the chariot with Sri Krishna teaching Arjuna. And it says Bhagavad Gita, and then it quotes this Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. That's the quotation from the Gita that they selected for the Bhagavad Gita stamp because of the importance of this verse. This is the essence of karma yoga, right in the first half of this verse. The second half is important too, but the first half is the seminal part of the verse, and is perhaps the most difficult concept to understand as well. Why is it difficult to understand? Because everything we do has a motive. So how can I work without a motive? How is it possible to work without a motive? In fact, in the morning when we wake up, we have to think of some reason for getting out of bed. Otherwise, the body wants to continue lying there. The body doesn't want to get up. And of course, children, when parents come to wake them up to get ready to go to school, they try to pretend that they're still sleeping so they won't have to get up. And we have to think of something that's going to get us up out of bed. We think, oh, I've got to get up. I have to go do my japa, or I have to go get started on the day's duties, or I have to get my kids off to school, or I have to do this, that, and the other. So we think of some motive for getting us up out of bed. So starting from the time we wake up, we are driven by motive. I'm going to do this because of this. I'm going to get the iPad, set it up because I have to give a class. So I'm going to give a class because it's part of what I'm supposed to do. After this, I'm going to go out in the garden and do some work. Then because the garden needs this, that, and the other. I'm going to go to the grocery store because I need to buy groceries. I'm going to sweep the floor because I want the house to be clean so that people don't think that I'm a slob. So that people recognize that, yes, I'm a good and responsible person. I go to the office because I need to make money, because I have to pay bills. So everything we do, big and small, we do with some motive, some personal motive. I'm going to do this because of this. And that is making a sankalpa, an intention. I'm going to do this for this intention. And so even when we do puja, at the beginning of a puja, we state the intention of the puja. Because a person can do, as you know, a person can do puja purely for selfish reasons. I want my child to get good grades, and so I'm going to do this. Oh, Saraswati, I do this puja to you, offering these various things so that my child gets good grades. Or I'm going to offer this Bhumi puja so that when we construct our house here on this new property, it will be successful and we will be happy and so forth. So everything that we do with a motive. And here Sri Krishna is saying, work without motive. Don't be inactive, because that's what we would first think. If I'm not to work without a motive, it means I'm not to work. He said, no, don't be inactive. Don't be attached to inaction. Work, but work without a desire for the fruits of action. So what does that mean? For one thing, as I remember saying in this same class when I was coming to Austin, when we had gotten to this point, we're soon coming to the point where we left off, when we stopped the Gita class in person. That is just before the Stita Prajna Lakshanas, the qualities of a person of steady wisdom. So that's coming very shortly. But I remember saying that if you go to the office and work all week, and then the boss comes and gives you your paycheck for the week, and you say, oh, no, I'm not working for the fruits of my action. I'm practicing karma yoga. I'm doing it just without any desire for the fruits. So no, I don't need the paycheck. Well, the boss will be extremely happy. The boss will think that you are the best worker that they ever had, and ask where he can get more people like you. But you will not be able to pay your bills, and soon you'll find yourself in great trouble. So that's not the meaning. The meaning is not that you don't take your paycheck at the end of the week or the end of the month for your salaried work. It means that your motive in the work is to work because the work is there. You work because the work is there to be done. And yes, when the fruits come, the fruits come. But that's not the reason why you're doing it. So in the modern world, you find that many people dislike their work. Some people hate their work. Some people dislike their work. Lucky are those who have work that they enjoy. Some people have work that they love. They're very dedicated to their work. They love their work, find fulfillment in their work, and that's good. But some people dislike their work. And so if we are in a situation where our work is something that we find distasteful, difficult in a bad way, that is difficult that I don't want to do it, so there's so many problems and so forth, then we end up working for the sake of the paycheck. And we motivate ourselves by saying, well, I hate this work, but I've got to go because I need the paycheck. And so we spend our time working. Why? So that I can earn money to do the things that I need to do and want to do. So here we are spending the major portion of our waking time, at least 5 days a week, and at least 8 hours a day, sometimes more, only so that I can get a paycheck, so that I can do other things. But the work itself is miserable. So what kind of life is that? No, whether we like our work, which is a good thing, we're fortunate if we like our work, or whether we don't like our work, we work, but we have to learn to work because the work is there. The work is there, and everyone, as Sri Krishna says in chapter 3, which we will come to, in chapter 3, he says, no one can remain actionless even for a moment. Everyone is forced by the gunas of Prakriti, the nature of this universe. They're forced to be active all of the time. So we all have to work. And so work because you have to work. Work because there's work in front of you that has to be done. If you sit on your couch and say, no, I'm not going to work, then you land in even greater trouble. So do the work that you have to do, but do it as a gift. I do it and because it's there to be done. Now, that doesn't mean that you do it in a careless way because, well, it has to be done, so just get it done and be done with it. No. As Swami Brahmananda says, karma yoga requires great respect for whatever work you do. Whatever work you do, have great respect for the work. So you're not supposed to do the work for the fruits. You're supposed to do it because it's there to be done, and you have to do something, and so you do it for that reason only. And then you're supposed to respect it. How does all of that fit together? How does all of that? How can you put all of these things together? Well, the secret of all of this is that you use work as part of your spiritual practice, because, and even if you're not interested in spirituality, even then, if you're not interested in attaining God, you're not interested in realizing the self, you're not interested in developing spirituality, even then, do karma yoga, do your work in a spirit of karma yoga, because that will make you a better and happier person. We'll come to a verse in a moment that says that those who hanker, kripana phalahetavaha, miserable are those who work for the fruits of their action. And so, part of the secret of karma yoga and of this idea in karma yoga, because again, this is the heart of karma yoga, this verse right here, chapter 2, verse 47, the very heart of karma yoga. I got a deeper understanding of it many years ago, in 1990, when Swami Atmarupananda, a disciple of Holy Mother, came to San Diego, where I was living at that time, and stayed with me for 5 days. I was living there alone at that time. He came and stayed with me for 5 days, and I used to, during the daytime, I would take him out sightseeing around San Diego. And so one day, it was a Tuesday, we had come back to the ashram before lunch so that I could serve him lunch. And there was a devotee there, Antoinette, who used to come every Tuesday morning and clean the public parts of the ashram. That was her service. So we came in, she was already there working. And so I told Maharaj, this Maharaj is Antoinette. She's one of our devotees. She can't come to any of the lectures or classes, but Tuesday morning is the only time she has free. And so for years, she has come and cleans the ashram as her seva, as her service to Sri Ramakrishna. So Swami Atmarupananda went up to her and said, "Oh, I'm so happy to meet you. So happy to meet you. So happy to hear about your service to the center. But always remember, it's not what you do that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing that is important. It's not what you are doing that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing that's important." That is the secret of karma yoga. That's the secret of karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadasana. How do we work without motive? First of all, we work because the work is there, it has to be done. And I can't sit not doing something. So I work. But my focus is on who am I becoming through the work? Am I becoming a better person through this work? Not what am I going to get out of it in other terms. How much money am I going to get? How much praise am I going to get from people? And so forth. No, by doing my work in a proper spirit of karma yoga, I become a better person. Karma yoga uses karma as tapasya. Karma becomes our tapasya, our spiritual practice. How? By doing work properly, we learn to focus the mind. We learn to be present with that which we are doing. You all have heard about, some of you maybe have practiced it, but all of you have heard about mindfulness meditation. That's a very big thing in the world nowadays. It's a good thing, but a very big thing. Taught mainly by Buddhist teachers. They've even taught it that Kiran Bedi was teaching it in that large prison in Delhi some years ago with great success for the prisoners. And so doing karma yoga is a practice in mindfulness. You learn to be present with that which you're doing because you're not daydreaming about what is going to come out of the work. You're present with the work itself. The mind remains controlled because you're focused on the work, on doing it properly. Of course, there are two things that you can do. Either pay attention to the work, or if it's work that doesn't require much attention, then you can do japa and think about God. But for a lot of work, you have to pay attention. And so you learn to pay attention to the work itself because your focus is on the work itself. Karmanyevadhikaraste. Yours is the right to the work itself. So that means that you pay attention to the work itself because the fruits are not yours. Fruits are not yours. What does that mean? Does it mean, again, as I said, that when the boss gives you the paycheck, you say, no, that's not mine, that's yours, because mine is the right only to the work, not to the paycheck. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that, but it means that you are not thinking about the paycheck. You're not daydreaming about the paycheck. You are paying attention to the work itself, and so the mind becomes. You become mindful. Mindful means you're developing the power of paying attention, and that is directly transferable to meditation. Then when you sit in meditation, if you've learned to pay attention to what you're doing, to be present, whether you're washing dishes, sweeping the floor, working as an engineer, teaching school, acting as a nurse, whatever it is that you do, if you learn to pay attention to what you're doing, then you find that when you go to sit for meditation, it's easier to pay attention to what you're doing there. And so the skills of karma yoga are directly transferable to meditation, japa and meditation. So karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kudasana means pay attention to the work itself, because that's what is yours, not to the fruits of the work. So let me expand on that a little bit more. Not to the fruits of the work. What does that mean? It means that you can't, no matter how hard you try, you can't guarantee success and the avoidance of failure. And so, as Sri Krishna will say soon here in this chapter, and says again and again in other chapters, siddhyas siddhyo samo bhutva, becoming the same in success and failure. So you don't even worry about whether it's going to be successful or whether it's going to fail. That doesn't mean that I don't care, who cares what happens. I just slop things together somehow and it doesn't matter whether it comes out well or not. No, you start with respect for the work. This is God's work. Everything that I do is part of this grand universal sacrifice which is going on. And this is my part in it. And so I respect whatever work I have, whether it's sweeping or cleaning or working as a rocket scientist or a neurosurgeon. It doesn't matter. Whatever work I have, I do it with respect. But even doing my best at the work, I can't always guarantee success. There's so many factors that go into whether a work is successful or whether it fails. And that we have no control over. What I can control is doing the work properly. I control myself. I can control my reactions that come in the work. I can control my thoughts about others that I have to deal with in my work. I can control my mind and keep it focused on the work, but the outcome I can't control. How many times in our life we've done the best we could and everything seemed to be going wonderfully, and yet something went wrong. Somehow something went wrong and it was a failure. So forget about that. Success and failure don't matter in karma yoga. You may say, well, they matter a lot to me. Well, yes, to most people it does matter a lot. We don't want to be failures. And so, yes, the intent of this teaching is not try to be a failure, no. Yeah. Doing the work properly, trying to do it properly, means that you're trying to trying to do it properly. But whether it comes out well, whether it comes out ill, that is not in your hands. Leave that to God. If it fails, then you surrender that to God. If it comes out well, you surrender that to God. If you surrender only your failures and you take your successes to yourself, then you've become a hypocrite. If people praise you for your successes and you get all elated and puffed up with pride and everything, but then when you fail, you say, well, that's God's fault. Success and failure, not mine. That's God's problem. Well, no, that won't work. But if you, whether success comes or failure comes, if you're unperturbed by both, it doesn't mean that if you succeed and people say that was wonderful, that you have to say, oh, no, it's not. No, you don't have to say anything. Let people praise you, let people blame you, but accept both. Don't be bothered by either one. Or accept both and let them both wash off of you. don't take them to yourself. Then you'll be free from both. And so what's the advantage of that? The advantage of that is that you are free. You are working with freedom and your work ends in freedom as well. So karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu karasana. Yours is the right to work alone, not to the fruits of work. Ma karma phalaheturvu. Don't be attached to the fruits of action. Don't be, it actually means don't be one who works for, works for the fruits of action. Karma phala hetu. The reason is the fruit of the action that one lives. So don't be attached to the fruits of action, but also don't be attached to inaction. So do that which you have to do. As Swami Vivekananda says, if you want to understand karma yoga, read the Gita, study the Gita, don't just read it, study the Gita and read Swami Vivekananda. And look at Holy Mother's life. Holy Mother was the ideal karma yogini. And so Swami Vivekananda in his teachings and his life, of course, but his teachings, Holy Mother, her life, and the Bhagavad Gita. You'll find karma, the spirit of karma yoga. Even the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is full of karma yoga, full of karma yoga. So now we go to verse 48, which says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva manishina. I'm sorry. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. So the last foot, in a Sanskrit verse, there are 4 feet. So the last foot is also extremely famous, and that is samatvam yoga uchyate. Evenness of mind is said to be yoga. He defines yoga. Yoga is evenness of mind, that is tranquility of mind, that is yoga. So the first part says, Yogastha kuru karmani. Do your work being established in yoga, meaning being established in equanimity of mind, not desiring the fruits of your action, but doing it just because it is there. So do your action being established in yoga, meaning established in karma yoga. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. O Arjuna, having renounced attachment. So giving up, having renounced attachment, giving up attachment, then do your work established in yoga, in karma yoga. Siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva, being the same in success and failure. What I was talking about just a moment ago in the other verse. Being the same in success and failure, because samatvam yoga uchyate, because even-mindedness is yoga. So here in Swami Vireshwaraji's Gita, he says, established in yoga, O Dhananjaya, perform actions, giving up attachment, and unconcerned as to success or failure. This equanimity is called yoga. So this is a beautiful verse. Whenever you find a brief definition of something by a wise person, then that's something to pay attention to, something to hold on to. That yoga is equanimity. Equanimity in the midst of success and failure, equanimity in the midst of the performance of work, equanimity in the midst of success and failure. That is yoga, and particularly that is karma yoga. It is yoga in general, but it's in particular in the context of karma yoga here, because work, karma, is the tool used in karma yoga. And so that equanimity of mind is something that is difficult for us to attain. Why? Look at Swamiji's symbol of the order, the serpent with the raised hood, the serpent, and then the wavy waters, and the swan, and the sun, and the lotus. All of these elements which are traditional symbols in Hindu tradition. The sun is a traditional image of knowledge. The lotus is a traditional image of devotion. The swan of the Paramahamsa, the realized soul. The serpent power, Kundalini power of yoga. And the wavy waters of karma, karma sagara, or this ocean of karma. Work, the life in the world, the life of activity, is life in the midst of an ocean with large waves coming one after another. Life in the world, life of action is rough. The waters are always rough. Once in a while, they're tranquil for a little while, but even when they're too tranquil, you begin to worry, well, what's wrong? Things are a little too quiet now. What is going to happen now? And like the lull before the storm. And as I often say, we go through life thinking that I've got this particular problem in front of me. Say it's a large bill that I wasn't expecting, that I've got now some unexpected expense that I had to take care of, and I don't have money to take care of it. And so I've got this problem in front of me that I have to solve. If I don't solve it, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I'm very concerned about it, worried about it. But I go through life thinking, okay, right now I've got this problem in front of me. Once I can get rid of that, then I'll be so relieved, and then I'll be free sailing. So I work hard, I get rid of that problem, and I look up, and before I even have a chance to enjoy the satisfaction of having gotten through that, I see two more problems headed towards me. And so then I think, okay, if I can solve these, then life will be smooth sailing. And so finally I get those solved, and then another problem is coming towards me. That happens from the beginning of life to the end of life, problem after problem. And so that is life in the world. It's an ocean, a wavy ocean. And so that's why Swamiji used the image in his symbol of the wavy waters of karma. And so in the midst of those waters, we have to practice samatvam, equanimity, to keep the mind calm in the midst of these storms of life, because they don't end. That's the nature of life itself. Many people feel that, well, why are so many problems coming to me? Why can't I just lead an easy life like other people? You think other people's life is easy because you haven't seen inside of them to see the problems that they are facing. And so that is the nature of life for everybody. Yes, once in a while there are calm periods, but they don't last long. Most of life is problem solving. And so in the midst of that, learn to maintain equanimity. Swami Swahananda, many years ago, I heard him in a lecture when he was down in San Diego. I used to be in San Diego many years, and he would come down usually once a month and give a talk. He would say from time to time in his talks that the yoga method is just to take a determination, I'm not going to let anything disturb me. At first that sounds silly. How can I decide not to let anything disturb me? Because things are always disturbing me. But no, you can make a decision. And yes, it's a lifetime practice to make it a reality. But once you realize, I don't gain anything by getting excited in the midst of problems. I don't gain anything. It doesn't help at all that I get excited and fearful and my heart's beating and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? That doesn't help at all. It only makes it more difficult. So make a determination, and again, you'll fail at it. That's okay. When you fail at it, realize that, okay, I didn't do it well that time. Let me try again. And do that day after day, year after year. And eventually you'll come to a point where you can hold on to equanimity and realize that there's nothing that is worth getting excited over. Nothing worth getting excited over. There's no problem so big that it is aided by my getting excited. So let me not give up the control of my own mind just because there's something outside of me which is causing problems. No, let me face everything with equanimity. So make that the determination that I'm going to try. Yes, I'll fail, but it's exercise. And eventually I'll get stronger. The muscle of equanimity will get stronger, and eventually I'll be able to keep my mind under control. So that was a wonderful thing Swami Swahananda used to say, that the yogi just makes a determination, I'm not going to be disturbed by anything. The bhakta, the devotee, says, I'm going to surrender to God in every circumstance. So let God take care of things. I'll do what's there to be done in front of me, but I'm not going to worry about other things because that's in God's hands. So that's also a way of maintaining stability. And the two are not contrary to each other. It's not that you have to choose one or the other. There was a Swami, I've probably told this story before because I tell it often in different places. a Swami in Trabuco a number of years ago, Swami Bhadrananda. He was an Englishman. He died at Trabuco Monastery some years ago, maybe 20 years ago now, maybe. And he had been a British soldier in the British Army, and he was stationed in China before World War II. And when the Japanese took over Manchuria, then he was there. And so he was made a prisoner of war at the very beginning of World War II. So he spent the whole of World War II in a Japanese prison camp. In fact, after he was captured, he and his other soldiers in his regiment were captured. They were put on the firing line. They were blindfolded, their hands were tied behind their backs, they were made to kneel, and they're all lined up and they're ready to be shot, all of them to be executed, because the Japanese didn't want any prisoners, because if you have prisoners, you have to feed them, you have to take care of them, you have to put them somewhere. Easier just to shoot them. So they were all lined up to be shot. And one of the soldiers noticed on Swami Bhadrananda's arm a white band with a red cross. So he got someone of the Japanese soldiers who knew some English, and with the help of the translator, they asked Swami Bhadrananda, are you a medic? And he said, yes, I'm a military medic. And so then they lifted him up, untied his hands and said, we need medics, so we'll take you. So they took him to a prison camp where he was taking care of other prisoners. And so he spent the whole of World War II that way. So he'd been through everything. He had seen the worst of life. And so later, he was somebody who nothing could faze him. Once one of the young monks, who I still know, he left the monastery after a short time, but he's still a very close devotee, Roland. Roland was cutting the grass on a hill at Trabuco on a riding lawnmower. And he went sideways on the hill, which he should never have done, because the hill was too steep and the riding lawnmower rolled over. And it was a big, long, steep hill. And so he rolled over and over and over with the lawnmower on, falling down on top of him and then down to the bottom of the hill. So he's lying there at the bottom of the hill. And people saw that and they went running, and everybody's excited. Everyone's shouting, what are we going to do? Go call for an ambulance. And they go call Swami Bhadrananda because he had been a medic. And so he walks over calm. They tell him what happened. He walks over calmly. He looks, assesses the situation and says, yes, this needs to be done. Do that, do the other thing, call the ambulance. And that's it. He never got excited at all in the whole, so everyone else, they're spinning out of control because of the terror of the situation. But he had seen everything. So he saw this also, just, okay, so this is what you need. This is what has happened. This is what you need to do. So who was effective? The people that were running around terribly excited, or Swami Bhadrananda? Of course, it was Swami Bhadrananda. So, Samatvam yoga uchate. Yoga is equanimity in the midst of action. So then verse 49, which I alluded to some time back in this class. Durena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanaman vicha kripana phalahetavaha. So durena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. So that work, ordinary work, is far inferior to that which is done with wisdom. That is, that which is done with buddhi yoga, by joining wisdom to the work, or through the yoga of wisdom. So work which is ordinary work is far inferior to that which is done with the buddhi, with intelligence, with wisdom. Buddhau sharanam anvicha. Therefore, seek refuge in wisdom. Take refuge in wisdom. Kripana phalahetavaha. Because they are miserable who work for the fruits of their action. So if you're only working for the fruits of your action, You are kripana, you're miserable, but kripan means not just miserable, but it means that you are a small, it also gives the idea of being small-minded, insignificant, as well as miserable. So if you're working just for the fruits of your action, we're working as slaves. I want a few little things in life. I want to get a little paycheck. I want to get a little bit of enjoyment. I want to get a little bit of praise. None of that is worth anything. None of it is worth anything. So don't be small-minded and work for these little fruits of action. Somebody says something nice, the same person the next day, if you do something that they don't like, even if you did something quite innocent, but they don't like it, then they'll turn on you on a dime. They'll turn without any thought of what they were praising you for the day before. And so what is the use of human praise? It's so shallow, it's so insignificant, and it's so fickle. So don't work for the fruits of your action, because the fruits of action are insignificant. The work which is done as karma yoga, then that will give you eternal fruits, or the fruit of eternity, not eternal fruits, but the fruit of eternity. That will take you to God. And so, buddhau sharanam anvicha, seek refuge in this wisdom which I, Sri Krishna, am teaching you. So here, the running translation of Swami Vivekananda is, far inferior is work prompted by desire to work done through wisdom, through the yoga of wisdom. O Dhananjaya, take refuge in wisdom. Those who are impelled by results are miserable. And again, Kripana gives the idea of insignificant, miserable and insignificant, small-minded. All of those things are included in that rich word. And so here he's, again, just confirming what he's already said, that work for higher ends is that which is to be done. So instead of taking another verse, because the next four are connected, or the next three verses are connected. So we'll save those for next time. And then we'll get into this, and then we'll be back to where we were when we left off the class in place. So next class, we will be finishing what we had already done when I was coming down to Austin, and beginning what we had not yet begun. So we've gotten back to our former starting place.
Yes.
So let me now open up for questions if anyone has a question.
So let me ask Maharaji, I mean, so when we talk about inaction, that means there is no anticipation from my fruits, right? I mean, it should not be like, this is not how I desire it. This is not how I intend to go, right? But that would kind of lead to a state of mind where so can I be 100% into it? If I go with that state of mind that I I will just do the work, but I don't know what the result would be. Like, it is like probably I'm doing the experiment, but I don't know the objective of the experiment. You know, so sometimes there's this contradiction that has come to me. You know, I mean, so if you could
Yes.
explain this to me.
Yes, no, that it is a difficult, as I said, this is the most difficult point to understand in karma yoga. If you can understand this, then the rest of karma yoga is relatively easy. And so it's something that requires thinking about over and over in order to figure out the implications. And that's what you're asking about, or some of the implications of taking up this idea. So one thing is that we have to keep in mind that karma yoga requires that we respect the work. So again, it doesn't mean that we do something haphazard or sloppily because who cares? I don't care about the fruits anyway. So whether it's successful or unsuccessful, who cares? Just get it done. Hoi jabe in Bengali. That's good enough. No, it doesn't mean that. You do the work with respect for the work, but what you're respecting is the power of work to transform your character. By doing the work properly, then I will be transformed. And so if you respect the work, you're trying to do it well. And if you're doing it well, then chances are it's going to be successful. So again, it's not that, who cares? Not like that. You do the work with respect and you do it carefully, and chances are it will be successful. So you're not trying to be a failure, and so it's not really that you it's not at all that you're careless, but it is that you're doing it because of you've found in work a method of transforming yourself. By doing work properly, I learn patience, I learn perseverance, because to come to the completion of a work, you have to persevere in it. I learn perseverance, I learn patience, I learn how to keep my mind under control when people are criticizing me, when I'm doing the best I can, but the boss is still not pleased. And sometimes, as I remember when I was, before I joined the order, I was a student and I needed some money to travel to Chicago from my home in South Carolina. So I got a job at a Firestone auto parts plant. And it was the first, I had summer jobs as a kid, but I'd never had a real official adult job before. And so here I was working on an assembly line. And so I found that the foreman, the main foreman and his assistant, that they would come, and no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. Finally, I figured out, both by my own observation and by talking to other workers, that was their method, was to constantly say that, well, you're not doing enough, so that they could extract the last drop of work from you that they could. There was no way that you could ever live up to their expectations. And so that's an extreme case, but it's not an unusual case. Right. And so learning to tune that out. Once I knew it, then it was easier to ignore, because I knew that there's no chance of getting their praise. That's not going to happen. So so tuning out the praise and blame, not because you don't care about the work, but because that is what you care about, not what people say about it. And even whether it succeeds or fails, then that doesn't matter. I did the best that I could, and and through that, I was becoming a better person. And through failure and learning to face failure with equanimity, and still maintaining perseverance, through that also I'm becoming a better person.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Sriram here. So by equanimity and tranquility of mind, what happens to one's emotions and feelings?
Yes, that's a good question. So emotions and feelings are very important in spiritual life, but one of the strange things, if you read texts on yoga and Vedanta, especially, yoga is Patanjali's yoga system is the science of the mind, and yet there's no talk of emotions. It looks at first like there's no talk of emotions. How could they study the mind and not talk about emotions? Because that's central to our experience of the mind. The problem is that in English, we have classified a number of things under the same category, emotion, when they don't belong together at all. We think of love as an emotion. We think of hatred as an emotion. We think of anger as an emotion. We think of jealousy as an emotion. We think of compassion as an emotion. We think of sympathy as an emotion. Anything that we can say, I feel this, we think that's an emotion. But we've just classified things which are completely out. It's like comparing an apple and a gorilla. I mean, they're not in the same class at all. There's nothing that you can compare there. Love, compassion, sympathy, that comes from our higher nature. And jealousy, hatred, anger, all of those are lower impulses that come from the lower unconscious conscious mind, based on our selfish impulses. We think that love is mixed up with those, because when we love a person, we experience jealousy and envy and all of these, and anger sometimes, and all of these things. No, they're coming from completely different places. And so in karma yoga, what we want to do is to minimize these lower impulses of anger, jealousy, envy, all of those things. But we want to cultivate love, compassion, sympathy, those things which flow out of unselfishness, the unselfish heart. And so that we cultivate. And so that is consistent with this practice of samatvam, equanimity in the midst of action. And what that counters are these negative impulses which are part of our biological nature. Anger and jealousy and envy and pride and all of those things which come from a lower source.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll take one last question if there is one, otherwise we'll close.
Rigo Maharajji, there's one more question by Professor
Yeah.
Day, and I think that should be us for today.
Okay.
Pranam
Go
Maharaj.
ahead. Yes, Madan Babu, go ahead.
Just as a quick comment, as you are talking about karma yoga, I was thinking of, the way our Ramakrishna mission and mott were established. So there's a dual function. It is not only inaction, it is not only spirituality. We need to do some action. So as you were talking about this karma yoga, I was thinking Ramakrishna mission and mott with the two distinct but related function.
Yes, that's a very good point. And as Swamiji said, of course, Swamiji established that, Atmano mokshartam jagadhitaya cha, for one's own liberation, the spiritual side, and jagadhitaya, for the good of the world through action. So he established that. And he said also that I want, let me start over. He said that he was talking to the monks, but it applies to householders as well. That you can practice any of the yogas that you like, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, practice any of them, but I want everyone to practice some Karma Yoga. So he said, practice any yoga, any combination, that's okay, but everyone should include some Karma Yoga. Why? Because Karma Yoga is the great foundation of all of the yogas. If I'm practicing meditation, I'm doing my japa, and I'm thinking, I've been doing japa for so long and I don't feel anything. I've been doing it for years now and I still don't feel anything. My mind is still not concentrated. So what's the use? No, do it karmanyevadhikaraste. Yours is the right to the work, including japa, including meditation, not to the fruits. So if the fruits have not come, that's okay. Continue doing your meditation, whether the fruits come or not. The fruits will be there in time, but that's in the hands of God. That's not in your hands. And so go on doing your japa, go on doing your dhyana. And so all of the yogas are controlled by karma yoga. That in the practice of any yoga, we have to leave the fruits of our practice up to God. And so Swamiji wanted everyone to practice. And another reason that he wanted everyone to practice karma yoga is that karma yoga is the great testing ground for my inner development. It's easy to sit at home in my little shrine and do some japa and read a few books, listen to some spiritual music, maybe sing some devotional songs and feel very good. And then I get in the car to go to the office, and then somebody cuts in front of me and I get completely undone. I get so angry, I wish that I could ram my car into them, or at least I could get out and give them a piece of my mind or something. Where did all of my good feelings go? And so in the field of action, I'm constantly tested. I'm feeling good about things and somebody says something nasty to me, and then suddenly my mind is undone. So no, I'm constantly tested in the field, in the karma kshetra, in the field of action. So karma yoga is the great testing ground to see how much patience have I developed, how much steadiness of mind have I developed, how much devotion have I developed, etc. So with that, I will close for today. And I'll give a closing chant. But before I give the closing chant and its translation, let me just wish everyone well. Oh, and I wanted to mention that in August, here in Houston, we closed down. And so for August, this class also we will suspend until the beginning of September. In September, we will continue. So we'll continue to the end of July. Then we will start up again in September. Okay. And it's going to be a while before travel is safe and good for everyone, and group meetings are good. So we will continue in this format until circumstances are such that meetings in person are advisable.
Right, right,
so,
absolutely.
Okay, so I'll give a closing chant and then we'll close for today. Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutastun Vandiri Vyaistavai Vedai Sangha Padakramo Panishadair Gayantiyam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyantiyam Yogino Yasyandam Navidu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. We bow to that Supreme Being, whom Brahma and other gods praise with divine hymns, whose glories the singers of the Sama hymns sing through the Vedas and Upanishads, whom the yogis see with their mind absorbed in that through meditation, and whose end and beginning neither the gods nor demigods or asuras know. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Namaskar to everyone. Bye bye. So good to see all of you.